Before we begin the first module, we have to look at what is a computer. Computers are machines that can store and process information, and their operation is controlled by a series of step-by-step instructions called a program. Computers are everywhere. They're ubiquitous. They're all around us. We can't go a minute, a day without using a computer. As an example, if you look back to from the minute you woke up today, you used an alarm clock, that's a computer. You used your car, that's being run by computerized systems. You used your refrigerator, your coffee maker, your microwave. All of that electricity is being run by computerized systems. And these devices themselves have embedded computers in them. Computers can be programmed. Their operations are run by programs. And a program is basically a set of instructions that allows a computer to follow a task or to perform a task. Computers can perform the same task repetitively 365 days a year, 24 hours a day without ever making a mistake. So the next time you walk into a bank and the teller tells you, well, our computer made a mistake, you might want to painstakingly explain to them that computers don't make mistakes. It's the humans that write the programs, also known as programmers. It's they who make the mistake in the code. A programmer is a person who can design, create, and test computer programs. This class, which is COSC1336, prepares you to be a Python programmer, prepares you for a career in programming by introducing you to Python programming. There are two distinct components to a computer, the hardware and the software. Let's first talk about the hardware before we get to the software. The hardware is the actual physical devices that make up the computer system. Whether we talk about the large computers or the small ones, or we talk about tablet computers or palm-top computers, all of them have some form of hardware. That is the physical device. That's the electronic circuitry. A computer is nothing more than a collection of electronic circuits, and data travels along these circuits. These circuits are either on or off, and based on their state, there is tasks that are performed by a computer system. The typical major components of your computer are your central processing unit, your main memory or RAM, your secondary memory, and your input-output devices. Let's talk about the CPU for a minute. That's an important part of hardware. This is the part of the computer that actually runs the programs. It is the most important component. Without it, you cannot run any software. CPUs are the heart and the brain of the computer system. The CPU is in a constant fetch and execute cycle where the next instruction is fetched, it's executed, it's analyzed. The part of the computer that is supposed to perform the instruction is signaled. For example, you may have experienced this before, where you go to print a document. Your printer is attached, but there is no paper in the printer. You get an error message. Who signals this printer for printing? It is a part of the control unit, which is part of the CPU, that will signal the printer or will signal the disk drive to actually go and save. The CPU is the most important part. The other part of the CPU besides the control unit is the arithmetic logic unit, which is a very important part, which enables your CPU to do comparisons and do math. Most of the current day desktop computers use microprocessors. Microprocessors are very small processors, which are literally the size of the nail on your pinky, and they're stored in large, and not very large, but small 1-inch square housing. And these microprocessors can literally carry out millions of instructions per second. There is also another computer hardware part known as the main memory or RAM. RAM is random access memory. The CPU, all programs that you run are first taken to RAM before they're executed, because RAM is fast. However, RAM is also expensive, And it's also volatile, which means everything that is stored in RAM while the computer is running is lost. Now, you may have experienced this before if you're editing a document and you go to control the, you go to close the application with which you're editing the document, and you get an error message that says, do you want to save the changes? If you don't save the changes, what happens to this document? It's gone forever. Because until you save it, this document is stored in main memory. Any program that you run is first loaded into main memory. A second type of memory is secondary storage. Secondary storage can hold data for long periods of time. Programs that are normally stored here stay here until something happens to the storage medium. Secondary storage is also much cheaper than main memory, which is RAM. Secondary storage always has to be backed up. As I say, there are only two types of hard drives, ones that have failed and ones that will fail. Secondary storage is huge. It's not limited in capacity like RAM is. It's not as expensive as RAM is. There are different types of secondary storage. You've probably heard of the hard drive, which is normally the C drive on your Windows-based machine, and it's the Macintosh HD on your Apple machine. This drive can store terabytes of information. Terabyte is 1 trillion bytes of information. Then you have the USB flash drives. These are portable. And then you have optical devices, which are devices such as the CDs. Besides that, you have input and output devices. Input devices serve two purposes. Input device, you have a keyboard, a mouse, a scanner, and a camera. The dual purpose that the input device serves is that the input device allows the user to communicate with the computer. As well, this input device translates from user understandable form to something that your computer can understand. For all its smarts, your computer can only understand a language of zeros and ones. And that's part of the input device. Output devices, on the other hand, do exactly the opposite of input devices. They allow your computer to display output to you and communicate with you. And they also convert from zeros and ones to something into a user-readable format. Some of the more common output devices that you've seen are your monitor, your printer. Another common output device is the speakers when the computer actually speaks to you.